going to get started, and we'll start with a pledge when we're ready, and I think we're ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome back, everybody. We are back in exec session and lively conversations about lots of different things that are appropriate for exec session. And so now we're back, and we have some business to get to, and we will do that. And I'm seeing late hitting news to personnel reports, etc. So are we modifying anything?
Yeah, the personnel report that was in the agenda has a addition of a couple of words. It's on page 2, Roman numeral 4. Fourth name up from the bottom, for department leader was added. Those words were added.
Clarification.
Clarify what that was about. And then there's also a supplemental personnel report dated today, and that's the one that has 5 names on it. We saw one earlier in the day with 3. This one has 5.
Okay. All right. Noted. And nothing else, correct? So we'll accept those modifications. Public comment period. Don't see a lot of public. We're always happy to have comments. It's an opportunity for staff to speak as well. But it's, I would think everybody's doing what we should be doing, is enjoying the last few days before Labor Day. But we're in a meeting, and so we're going to go through our meeting. And but actually, it's always good to continue the work. And consent agenda, can we just move on to that?
I'll move the consent as presented.
Second.
A couple of IPI grant, some money from Cornell for one program. So it's the beginning of the year, and we're starting to see those sorts of things coming in.
We got money from Cornell.
Don't get excited. I think it was $600.
Okay.
But for the program it went to, it's important.
Yeah, exactly.
So those are there.
We're always happy when billion-dollar enterprises are able to share.
Exactly. I don't believe there was anything else that commented on this week.
Right. Okay. So we're good. Did we move it yet?
I did.
Okay. We seconded?
Seconded by Pat.
Well, there you go. I was thinking of other things, but so move seconded, all in favor. That's going to be everyone. That's then we do have the work session listed. Do we need to go through them? Any updates from the board sessions, work sessions, committees, etc.?
Well, if you want, I can. Facilities. As you all know, we're working our way. We'll go back to those. It wasn't up on the board yet.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh.
Facilities. Amanda has hosted 3 sessions with building leaders and other leaders.
Right.
2 sessions. Sorry. This summer, starting to work through on a bond proposal for next May. So that's in the works. Student health and safety first, maintenance, and learning environment are the 3 items we're focused on. Those meetings are going to get longer as the fall goes on, but that is.
What do you mean longer? I mean,
those are going to get longer.
Yeah.
Those are going to get longer as the autumn goes on.
We do have fun. I mean, they are
we need to be.
They are interesting meetings. We do
But
have
we
to
need
keep
to
it
be-
lively from time to time. But
We need to have things pretty much lined up by February in order to meet the May voting schedule. So that's why I say it'll be a little more exciting as we move on. Finance Committee is already working on different budget, different departments. The budget process goes on year-round, so that's underway as well. It meets monthly with facilities at this point, so those meetings are running about 3 hours.
We have to be perky.
Exactly.
Show up perky, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brad. Ann, I know legislative advocacy was meeting.
We've been doing some meetings with politicians actually, so NISBA arranged meetings, one with Senator Schumer's office, so I was fortunate to be able to attend that one, but there were some other board members from other districts there. It was kind of a small meeting, but we met with members of the staff. Brad and I went to Congressman Reed's office last Thursday, but also arranged by NISBA. And there were other board members from other areas in, in his particular district. So that was an opportunity for us to advocate for education. So that was interesting. We actually have 2 meetings that are upcoming. We'll be meeting with Assemblywoman Barbara Lifton to continue to advocate for the Health Insurance Reserve Fund that never, that the Senate went home before it had a chance to pass. It was so close. It was so close. And then it looks like Senator Omar will be coming here in October also to meet with us, and that is one of the prime topics that we'll discuss with him.
Just meeting here, is he visiting schools at all, or is he's at Cornell or something? Or?
He's apparently going to Cornell first. We understand he has about 45 minutes to spend with us, so we'll figure out how to.
There you go. Anything else for HR, et cetera? Chris isn't here, but.
Chris isn't here. We had a meeting, and we have not yet chosen a chair for
Oh, so
HR.
you're a little behind, I think, okay.
Well, all 3 members were not there, so I suggested that we wait to.
You didn't vote for the person who wasn't there?
No, we didn't vote for the person who wasn't there. And then curriculum also met, and after a hotly contested election for chair, Eldred Harris became the new curriculum chair.
Did anyone demand a recount?
Yeah, Eldred probably did.
The polls were open
No,
late into the evening.
So good, well, at least you picked a chair, and
We picked
maybe
a
we'll
chair.
have curriculum at some point in the future, that's great. Any policy updates?
No, unfortunately, the policy meeting for last month was canceled due to my absence and trying to get us all together, and we will be trying to make that up as soon as possible. We are still working diligently on the student code of conduct, and we are finding ways to hone our grammar and English language skills
And formatting.
and formatting skills.
Perfect, I will leave that to
That's right.
others who.
We'll let you know how to do a list,
Yes.
grammatically correct, right?
Wow, that would be.
I can give you a 5-second update for curriculum, what we discussed, yeah.
Oh, well,
All right, so I think nobody here is unfamiliar with the complexity of curriculum and how the group has struggled to try and wrap their minds around what the goals should be.
That's 5 seconds.
There it is, given the scope of curriculum. What we decided to try this year is to have our highly qualified staff present us with their top 5 priorities of what it should be. And the ones that rose to the top, obviously, literacy, this new anti-marginalization curriculum, and a few other things. And Pat made a really good point about trying to make a further distinction between which of those are almost atmospheric and affect everything, and which ones are very specific to the quality of the teacher and the quality of their content mastery, right? So we're trying to figure this out, but that's going to be the goal, just to stick with 5. Figure out what we can move, how we can help them move the chains on those 5.
very good. Thanks, Eldon. I thought we were done with curriculum, that I'm glad we came back, and Dr. Brown, we're ready for you, Dr. Brown.
Thank you for the opportunity today. A couple of quick announcements. Next week is a big week for us, September the 4th, 8:30 a.m. We will have our convocation, and we're hoping to see as many board members who are available up front on the front row. We'll have all of our staff here to kick off our school year. Also on September the 5th, the next day, we're going to have our second, hopefully annual, Leading with Love Walk. This year is going to be a special opportunity as we have each of the local college presidents are going to be here, and they're going to be here with their teams to be a part of the walk, along with a lot of other local leaders and a lot of other families and folks who are really excited about coming out on a morning where it won't rain, hopefully, and we can walk from Stewart Park to Ithaca High School. We're going to hear from some young people, and then we're going to hear from the college presidents as they are hoping and wishing for a successful start of our school year. So we'll send you those dates also. And tonight I wanted to just highlight, each year this time of year we talk about communication, and as our admin team got together last week and we talked about the systems that allow for us to do our mission, to meet our vision, communication always rises to the top, both how we do it externally and internally. So it's a key system for us. And I'm often asked, we're a $100+ million organization, how big is your communications team? And I always respond, I look over to Casey. We have one person in-house that does communication, and she does a bunch of other things that we see tonight. So I can't say enough about how great her work is. We will share with you a link, and this is on our website now, and it's a bit of if you can walk through it, it's an ICSD Communications 2017-2018 recap. And again, I think you will see how impressive, we are winning state and national awards for our communication efforts, but you'll see how expansive the efforts have been and what we've done new over the last year. And I'll just read some stats as she's sorting through everything from our newsletter, which we have new newsletters that are going out to more and more people this year, in addition to enhancing our ICSD Insider, which we do each year as well. Facebook, for example. We, in 2017, 2018, we had close to 17,000 video views, and those videos are curated by our team. And we're enhancing our efforts. Most recently, just this past week, we had 7,000 views of one particular video that was about a new administrator. So the more and more we do, the more and more people are going to our Facebook page to see some of those videos. Twitter, our profile was visited last year close to 52,000 times, which is pretty impressive. And we started an Instagram account this past year, and our stories, which we try to send out at least once a week, are reaching up to 500 people each time. So when it comes to social media, we're enhancing our efforts, and we're doing more and more. We're trying to do more and more each day. And we'll send you this link that sort of recaps the year, what we've done to enhance our communication efforts, both internally and externally. But again, I can't say enough about Casey and what she's done. In addition to what, 8 years ago we started this work, it was about our website getting redesigned. That was communication. And I remember the conversation we had in our community about the need to enhance communication and the fights we had about bringing in an in-house person. So we still just have that one person, and I'll put Outwork up against any organization in our community as far as how we communicate our efforts. So that's all I have on that, and all I have for my superintendent business. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Brown. And so let's move on, and we're going to get right to special presentations.
We'll invite my friends up. Come on up, Mary. Yeah, Lisa. As we talk about our anti-marginalization curriculum efforts, which are well underway now. That we foreshadow.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. So I am your inclusion officer, Mary Gerber.
And I am Lisa Sahasubade, your new teacher on special assignment for culturally responsive teaching.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the anti-marginalization work that we have the privilege of inheriting and how it's connected to other initiatives that have been going on. And our hope to make that connection really transparent with families and students and staff. And so anti-marginalization is connected to the My Brother's Keeper grant and initiative. It is connected to the equity team work, as well as existing problem-based learning and case study work. It's all connected.
So the purpose of the anti-marginalization curriculum is twofold. We're hoping to move the work of teachers in the area of equity and anti-racist understandings and anti-marginalization issues for their own professional development. And by doing that and engaging them in the process of curriculum writing, we hope then to move our students as well. One of the things that we started with was thinking about our seniors and what they were graduating with in terms of skills and competencies, and thinking about what else we think they need. Because obviously there are people in the world who need things that maybe they didn't get from school. And maybe that's why we as a kind of global community are where we are now. So we're hoping to add to what we give to our children, pre-K through 12, so that when they graduate, they're able to kind of grapple with big ideas and be change makers. Actually engage in the work that makes a global community run smoothly and efficiently. Maybe not smoothly and efficiently, maybe just run peaceably, or more peaceably, maybe we want to say. So what we've been doing, we want to develop curricular units that are, and all of this is on the sheet that you have, right on the what part. We want the units, whether they're actual case studies or project-based learning experiences or just kind of old-fashioned units, to be inquiry-based, to involve original research. And by original research, we mean children doing research. Children making decisions about what problems or questions they want answers to, and figuring out how to answer those questions. We want the units to involve fieldwork and collaboration with experts, and require the students to synthesize learning from multiple disciplines. We always talk about project-based learning as being interdisciplinary. We also want to provide service to our global and local community. We don't, as Mary would say, I guess, we don't just want field trips, but we want field studies and service learning projects. So what they're doing at the end of these curricular units is helping our community either solve a problem or provide a service. So it's real stuff. Our learning targets, well, I'm gonna go back. Some of the work that we've done so far with our teachers. Right now, we've worked with probably about 12 so far. And we're moving them through experiences that are gonna help them understand that when you're talking about anti-marginalization, what you want to do is shift your gaze, right? So Toni Morrison talks about a white gaze, that the world, many authors, Toni Morrison says, see the world through a white gaze, through their own white eyes, right? With whiteness as the center. We're hoping that these curricular units begin to shift that for children. So children who are typically on the margins begin to see themselves as the center. And you know, that's gonna do a whole lot of shifting in a whole lot of other ways if we can really do that. The first thing that we're working on is trying to help teachers figure out ways to do that are real and authentic. The learning targets are learning targets for teachers. We want teachers to be able to recognize and respond to complex issues of identity, diversity, prejudice, and power in learning communities. And we want teachers to be able to explain how marginalization is constructed at an individual level and an institutional level. And, of course, as teachers begin to be able to do this, they will, we're hoping, be able to develop units that then are gonna allow children to do this same thing.
So of the money that is allocated for this work, the majority is going into the paid professional development. We're also working with consultants such as Shrek Holly, Dr. Heather Hill from the college helped us, was instrumental, actually, I would not say just helped, in the 2-day workshop that we had in August with teachers. The timeline, the projected timeline is fairly ambitious. The hope is that the 12 teachers who have completed the 2-day workshop will do six weeks of instructional coaching with Lisa. Then the other 12 the other 14 will start in early fall and complete the 2-day workshop so that they can start their instructional coaching cycles later in the fall or early winter. So that number 26 is designed with intentional design that we would have at least 2 teachers or educators in every building in our district alongside their equity team member, and then also alongside their My Brother's Keeper family engagement facilitator. So then you build an affinity group in every school of 4 people having these conversations and doing the work that will be embedded in the professional learning community meetings that are held school-wide twice a month. And we started a draft of questions, the initial brainstorm that we have. So if you think of something like KDT, where every kindergartner in our district has a common experience, how could every pre-K through 12th grader in our district have a common experience and explore the same essential question, which is one, Teaching Tolerance has put out one set of questions and standards. So this was one of half a dozen resources that teachers looked at throughout the 2-day workshop as they, along with social studies standards, as they're looking at what are some questions, what do we hope students to be able to know, be, and do.
So, for example, when we first brainstormed what a 12th grader should be able to do when they graduate, one example would be one person said they want a 12th grader to be able to engage in courageous conversations about race. So then we talked about, well, what does that look like in pre-K? What does a pre-Ker need to do in order to be able to do that when they're 18? And then how, using essential questions, how does that question change? So the question that you might begin with in pre-K is, who am I? And then as you move up, it might be, how do I define myself? How do I identify? How does my friend identify me? What groups do I belong to? And on until you're beginning to have more questions that involve dialogue and conversation. And this was a challenging process because the educators that we had in the room were not pre-K-12 educators, right? They were first grade teachers and third grade teachers and 8th grade teachers and 10th grade math teachers and a technology teacher from the high school. So to have them kind of think about that was really, really interesting. We're using the social justice standards from Teaching Tolerance as a way to anchor ourselves because they do a really good job of taking a standard and changing it pre-K to 12. So we're hoping that our questions will eventually fall in line with some of their standards and of course with this social studies standards, if not ELA standards as well for New York State.
Go ahead.
Well, I just had a question about the case study aspect of it, because it sounds like at some level here that you're kind of building the groundwork. So how do you see it in practice, like in a case study form, like where it actually comes into the classroom or designs, a unit around that? How might that work?
Yeah, so it's a great question because when you take a kindergarten case study, for example, who am I is a kindergarten case study. And so how do we take the anti-marginalization lens and look at that case study and encourage teachers to evaluate their case study and reflect on it? So a lot of the work we were talking about is you could enter this work with a unit or a case study that you've already created.
Okay.
And everyone is tracking their reflections on their teaching now. So it's one activity after we after Dr. Hill facilitated a couple of sessions, they went to their case studies and reflected on it. Do you still think it's as great as you thought last year? Because the power in that reflection and tracking that is, I think, gonna help us grow and help one another grow.
And a natural and easy way to do it is to link it to a social studies standard. The new social studies standards are all based upon this idea of social action. What are you gonna do, right? Informed citizens act. So a question, for example, for a fifth grader could be, you know, your essential question for a case study could be, why is the United States the only country that hasn't signed the Convention on the Child? Which is true, we still haven't signed it. Somalia now even signed it, but the United States still hasn't. So that's a real question, and that can end with a real letter writing campaign to representatives, right? So that is the lens of a case study. It actually fits really easily into it.
I like that idea, I just have just played the devil's advocate a little bit. How do you encompass multiple perspectives politically with something like that? Like if you say, well, the end result is you're gonna write letters to somebody, how are you gonna manage the fact that people are coming from different, you know, political views too, and yeah. I'm just saying, I just think that could be something that might arise.
The beauty of a case study is that the teacher shouldn't know how it's gonna end. So I might think one way, and as I work with my students, it might end up a different way. And so I might want it to be an ELA letter writing experience at the end, but our letters might be from different perspectives. And if that learning is backed up, it's still social action and it still met the criteria for the case study.
Right.
Student involvement. Have we brought students into this at all this summer? And how are we gonna bring them in this fall? We had a handful of students here last spring who seemed somewhat unhappy. And I did go to one evening with Cynthia Henderson from IC, who worked with some of the students, and we kind of told them there'd be more. So where are we on
That's a great question. Great edit to make on this draft.
that? Yeah.
So this came up in the workshop, and we were intentional in this first round not to have students as we were learning the needs of the teachers. So I think brainstorming ideas with the teachers on how we can include the students, but also brainstorming with them. Or not brainstorming, asking how they would want to be involved in the work is an important next step.
And we did an opening activity that through which we were able to bring student voices in, so that teachers are aware of student voices. It would be a really great addition to bring students in after we have kind of our essential questions, pre-K-12, and have them add to our work to see how they see it going. In any work that involves social justice and culturally sustaining pedagogy, the voices of the student is paramount to the work. And bringing the child in and allowing them to actually learn how to unpack whatever the injustice is that they see inherent. It's very empowering for them. So it is very important, and we will make sure that it's in.
So, well, thanks, Brad. I guess it's been a long day for me, but well, you're talking about the work, and I always kind of thought our work was the students. So what? There's work going on, but it's not student-centered. It's staff-centered. Is that what I'm hearing, or because you quoted the work?
Yeah, it's twofold, right?
But now we're gonna bring in students at some point to the work. So there's work that's going on, but there's not students, so it's, just to clarify, when
Yeah.
you're talking
So,
about the work, what is the work?
I think the work is self-awareness for adults and where they are on the continuum of being a culturally responsive educator. And so we have to start there.
Right, thank you
And-
for,
Yeah.
for clarification.
And absolutely the students, their voices have inspired this work. And we were, after the first day, after using student writing and student voice to help us reflect as educators, we all left wanting to write thank you notes to them. So for us to innovate a new model of professional development that's amongst students that you just mentioned, Brad, is really exciting.
They're expecting to be brought back in.
Yeah.
And this approach is based in research. We talked a lot about Loretta Hammond, and we spent a year reading that book, and it's broken down into 4 categories. And the first category is awareness, and it speaks to adult awareness, self-reflection. And then it's community building, information processing, and then learning partnerships, all things that involve a significant amount of student leadership and empowerment and voice and choice. But again, this awareness stage is where we are right now, is that first stage, and it really is about self-awareness and being aware of the issues and self-reflecting.
So have you thought of any strategies in terms of how you're going to include the students? Because I think there was an example that maybe Anne brought up about, thinking about the K through 5 and how you talk about those experiences in terms of anti-marginalization with a kindergartner. I personally think that when you hit middle school more so, there's more, why haven't I learned to talk about this thing? I think about pre-K, and I remember my first experience was my child not even being in pre-K yet, but her visiting a pre-K class and the pre-K teacher doing an activity with her and was like, draw this picture of yourself and pick a paper. And she picked the lighter paper, and this teacher who's really sweet, really loved her, she was like, honey, that's not what you look like. And I was really upset, but at the same time taking a step back. But in that moment, this teacher didn't recognize that she was telling Jayla what she looked like. She was telling her what she looked like through her eyes and took away her power to see herself, even if she identified more with me than her being more fair-skinned than her dad. And she may not have known, she did not know in that moment what she was doing, but I'm wondering how are we allowing teachers to understand the impacts that they have on students without them even knowing? So this experience happened, Jayla didn't think anything of it, she was like, man, okay, whatever. But how are teachers able to know the impacts that they're having on students when students, A, feel disempowered to be able to speak up about these things? Years pass by, this teacher's now retired, I can't even have this conversation with her. And now student voices in some way feel like an afterthought, even though I understand you're building a foundation, but they're at the center. So when is that going to happen? When are you going to hear that feedback in terms of when they want to be involved? And I'm sorry, I just pulled that Eldred, I just gave a whole long spill and then.
But again, I think you answered your question, though. Because used to me, what was missing there was an awareness. And that's where we are right now. Without that awareness, we can't even enter into that conversation. I was in classrooms this year where teachers had not seen the Black Panther. And to be able to interact with a young person, particularly my son, in 2018, without having seen or being aware that I should know about the Black Panther, and that's the literature he's reading at home and how that's had an impact on his life, is an issue. Now, unpacking that understanding and that self-awareness is real adult-centered work. We're not ready to bring his voice in to having that person figure out that I need to be aware of those issues that are impacting every young person in this classroom. So I mean, I think I heard you answer that and talk about that awareness that person didn't have, and unfortunately that person's not here for us to even engage in that conversation.
But even as a parent, for me to have the consciousness to be upset about that, I could have easily been a younger parent, an older parent, and have been like, oh, she's helping my daughter see that her paper should be darker. But what about those parents who don't know how to advocate, who aren't able to give that feedback? Like, what happens then?
That's the community conversation we're leading right now. We're trying to wake up an entire city And we need to have every parent see that and call us out on that lack of voice and choice and that blind spot. We had a conversation with new teachers today, and I said, when I have spinach stuck in my teeth, I want you to tell me about it. And we need to consider everyone. When there's something stuck in your teeth, we need to call each other out on it. And we're educators who are risk averse and conflict averse, and we're a city that's that way. So when these things happen, we need to be comfortable in the spirit of cooperation versus conflict to call each other on it. We now have that language, and it happened here with 200 people last spring, where we had that conversation real way and we moved past it, and we're having this conversation now.
And that, Nicole, is also a little bit of what my job is, of what this new role that I'm in. I'm kind of not completely solely responsible, but it's my job to find that teacher and go in and have that difficult conversation with that teacher. So I would encourage you to give me a call and tell me who that teacher is and how I can support that teacher, not in a bad way, not in a punitive way, but you're right, that's where the conversations have to start. And I think the creation of this teacher on special assignment is to do just that, to begin to have those conversations with teachers so we can begin the work there. And that's why I say the work right now, for me, is with the teachers of the children.
Now we can hear from Eldred.
2 questions. One, you already heard from me, and I'm glad you said that what you're doing with the curriculum ties into all these different things, including project-based learning, right? So what we talked about specifically is how, given that you have to move relatively slowly in getting the adults aware, how do we also speed up the process so that when we collectively have these momentous events, teachers are ready to play their part in helping all of us get through it, right? So it's one thing not to know, that. Funny thing is, if you actually invited Aiden into a session within 5 minutes, you realize that everything in his life is a Black Panther. He doesn't have to say a word. Okay? He's got the mask on, he's got the gloves on, he's running around in the suit. And if you don't know what that is, there's a question, right? But it's another thing when we have instances like Charlottesville, we have instances where minority people keep dying, right, in conversations or interactions with police. That's another thing. To ask me to be patient with adults who aren't ready to engage in that conversation is trying my patience at this point, right? So what's the effective use of what we were trying to go with project-based learning in engaging in those situations? That's one question. The second question is, whenever you mention KDT, everybody's eyes here line up. We know what that is. We know the power of that is. We know what that's done for us as a district. I'm curious how we would go about creating something like that for this purpose, right? There's a sign in Ellis Hollow that points to a slave cemetery, right? That's never been uncovered. There are indigenous cemeteries up on Connecticut Hill, right? We have instances of any number of small farms that blinked out of existence, right? And been consumed by agri-farms. So when you're trying to build that work, there's a chance to do something real, like KBT did, especially for older kids. That's why we got that fancy black bus, right? So what are the, curious about hearing your thoughts about exploring more about how we can replicate some KDT activities for the older students.
I think that when we're looking at common experiences, pre-K-12, we have to really examine our structure in schools and what we see as roadblocks to those common experiences and what is, because we construct those. So as teachers are moving through this work and identifying what needs to change and how we're going to build in common experiences for children, I believe they will be inspired to deconstruct certain structures. So I think that self-awareness and that inspiration of this, it has to happen now. And the self-awareness that our educators will have after spending a day with Lisa. we'll move that forward. Because field studies, we had the privilege of taking a group of teachers to Buffalo Street Books for a field study as part of this workshop. And that was really powerful, and it was intentional, and it was a common experience. And it took an hour.
How much time do you feel that teachers need in this cohort to be able to take children on field trips? So I'm thinking about, there's a course at Cornell where they're tracking the Underground Railroad. Say you have a social studies teacher or a US history teacher who wants to take a group of students on such a trip. I can say from my experience at IC, I had a music teacher, an African-American music teacher. She was a white professor who was teaching African-American music. And when slavery Jim Crow came up, she would play the piano and start crying and just disperse class. So in terms of like emotional stability, like how, I don't want to say you don't know this answer, but how are you making sure that students aren't being placed in situations where teachers are not ready yet to do the work alongside of the students, in terms of taking them to Harriet Tubman's house and then feeling emotionally disturbed by the story, and then the students being there? Like, how much time have you two talked about in terms of?
Let's go back, because I feel like I'm in a time loop, as Sean would call it right now. And the time loop, if we substitute the word technology in for culturally responsive practices, it's the same conversation. We have had this similar type of emotional reaction from educators over the last 15 years as we implemented a laptop in the class. I don't want any part of it. The kids are having that conversation, but I'm not ready to. And if you ask me to do that, you better give me a bunch of PD, and if you make me do it, I'm gonna rebel. And it's similar to the conversation we have right now. And I remember 15 years ago saying to the technology specialist, you need to work yourself out of a job. Because the horizontal accountability needs to be so where the POC conversations are always embedded, it is always there as part of the culture. You're talking about technology, and we don't need a specialist to come in like Elisa to lead that conversation. The people on that team are having that conversation. And so we're 15 years removed from that, and we're just getting to a place where we have these integration specialists who are now more instructional coaches versus a tech support person. This year we vowed not to use the word technology ever again, and we see that our Google Doc for Education has enhanced instruction in a way where it's just not an add-on, it's part of what we do. We're at stage one, and unfortunately that's where we are when it comes to culturally responsive practice. Most districts aren't even having this conversation in public right now. So we're here in the awareness stage, hoping that she works herself out of a job, where that 3-person PLC team, at the core of it, when they're looking at standards, the standards embed some of these teaching and tolerance standards that speaks to how we talk about anti-marginalization and oppression beginning in pre-K. That's where they start, when they start with their curriculum. And right now, if you look at the standards in the Common Core, technology standards were embedded in those standards, where there used to be an add-on. So I hate to make that kind of a connection, because we're talking about people's lives and people dying, and I feel the sense of urgency. And the other, we're talking about technology tools and the shift to being prepared to live and work. There are some comparables and there aren't, but when it comes to education speak, that's the quantum leap we need to take. I just hope we can do it quicker than 15 years. Because that's been the last 15 years of my life trying to get technology tools here. And let's not use that word, and hopefully we can be quicker when it comes to these practices. All that say, we don't have to get figured overnight.
Sean, anything?
Just to the last point about the Cornell course that's trying to map the Underground Railroad locally, I'm impressed that there are 2 Ithaca High School social studies teachers who've been involved in that project. Acknowledging their own lack of knowledge, but being open to trying to learn and trying to figure out how you can then map that same curriculum to K through 12, 9 through 12 high school curriculum as well. So it's been good that in this community that people are having some of those conversations, acknowledging their lack of understanding, and saying, how can I get involved? The question becomes, how do we stop other folks who are doing harm? And I just want to say the last part about student voice. I'm very appreciative that we're not including student voice at this point in time, because we have a bunch of folks who would do more damage. That we're at the point in time of where the adults, the grown folks need to get their stuff together. And I think about the ways in which I operate my classes. I spend all summer long listening to student voice, but putting together a class that does not include students in front of me to be able to maximize some things and then to go through afterwards. And so that's partly what I've been hearing from some of the anti-marginalization workshops that took place, is that there was a lot of good work to try to get a foundation set. And then to go out and try to do this work hands-on.
Thanks, Sean. Pat, anything more?
Yeah, so this is not directly related to the anti-marginalization curriculum, but it is sort of related, so, because this work certainly was pushed forward by events of last spring, which Brad alluded to, and another thing that those folks were expecting and that we promised was a group of folks working on looking at and removing barriers to co-curricular participation, so I'm wondering, where are we with that?
So that was gonna be at the next board meeting.
Okay, all right.
You wanna plug it and talk about what happened already, I mean, we've met a few times. You married.
Oh, Mary.
You said.
That married.
So this work is, again, through every component. If we think of a student entering our buildings in the morning off of a bus from breakfast till the end of their day, and how are we shifting, I would say shifting our efforts so there is an approach to bring families to our schools, but then with the MBK work is reaching out to where students are. And that approach throughout the co-curricular efforts, whether it's in the arts or sports, is paramount right now. How are we going out and inviting students in? How are we working, when you look at even a co-curricular experience, transportation, and the bus drivers driving students to these events? And I had the privilege of spending an hour with bus drivers today talking about that, and how are we welcoming and affirming students' identity when we engage with them.
And Daphne Shalulu and Samantha are co-chairing that committee. You've met twice, and we have another meeting scheduled for early September.
That's right.
So we plan to come to the board with an update on how that work is going. I said Mary, I was looking at Daphne, I said Mary.
That's right.
I will say, I attended meetings that Dr. Brown's talking about with it has just too many names in it, Daphne, so I'm sorry. The co-curricular group, and the way Daphne is strategically getting that group to begin to think about the issues that came up last year is truly impressive. It almost should be a roadmap for inclusive thought and the appeal or the approach to build things from the ground up. And I should also say, we had that same discussion at that meeting about getting that core together and then inviting students so they don't jump into a bit of a mess that the adults have made. I'm very hopeful that's going to lead exactly where we want it to go, at least in terms of coaches and plays. You know, now we discussed earlier what happens with dance, what happens with visual arts, what happens with drama. How do we continue to connect other ways for kids to show us how excellent they are?
Very good. Other comments, anything you want to end with, Mary, Lisa?
I would just say, this is only a couple of months in. Yeah. We just started this work. We had some great questions and great things. We have some community experts at this table. We need that thinking going forward as we design something. We don't know what this is going to end up looking like. We just know we're going to do it. We're going to the moon. I just don't know how we're going to build the rocket to get there.
We look forward to the work,
Yeah.
Dr. Brown. Thanks, Mary. Thanks.
Thank you.
A few more items. Public hearing on district safety plan, is that something we have to address?
Michael, Lily, you want to just give a quick synopsis of why we need to make a decision on some things tonight?
Yeah, there were some changes within the district safety plan. Mostly slimming down the language and the verbiage because it was not readable. And we worked with the safety team all last year, and Jim Drew from PSD BOCES really helped out with that. And the state law is that we have to bring any significant changes to a public hearing for them to ask questions about.
Okay, so,
Is there a notice period required?
Yeah, what's the notice period? 30 days?
Exact 45 days.
well, again, I guess,
5 days.
I will ask, what is the ask of the board at this time?
We need to set a date.
You need to
So
set
that's
it
why
up.
I'm asking the time period.
Yeah, that's,
So-
that's,
Time period.
So I'm looking for some input.
More than 15, less than 45, more than.
Are we talking on a board meeting date? Are we talking
That's
a
a special, that we
special?
wanna do it, it can be part of what we've done these before, it's been part of the board meeting, so I'm recommending that we look out 45 days and look at the next board meeting in that range.
We've got to give 45 days notice for a meeting, for a hearing? That's
I'm pretty
that's
sure that's-
unusual.
Yeah.
That's unusually
It's either
long.
30
It's either 30 or 45.
30 and 45.
Yeah, it's just unusually long.
It could be 30, but if we can be safe by going 45, is what I'm suggesting. We don't have that answer, y'all.
So you're looking out to the week of the 15th or the week of the 22nd of October.
Can we announce tomorrow that October 22nd will be
This would be before board meeting?
before the board meeting, we can do it.
Just a thought, on one of those Tuesdays, legislative advocacy meets and did
It's on the
curriculum.
23rd.
Did curriculum
Well,
move
yes,
also?
curriculum has moved to the other.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we could shift
we could shift,
something,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
We can shift a work session to ensure that we get this public hearing on.
5 Tuesdays in October, so you're holding the 30th for board development.
Yeah.
If you want to do a hearing at 5 o'clock with board development at 6,
Yes.
And I would,
We're bringing candy if it's on the 30th, right?
That's 31st.
that's the 30.
30.
We can bring candy anyway, that's just fine.
Or it can be the first half of the board meeting, it could be at 7 o'clock, and we can take that
Yeah.
first half.
23rd.
Yeah,
I
that's
would,
what I
Yeah.
I would not complicate board development with
Yeah.
a public hearing. That's,
Yeah.
because it's, the board development is really not
So
a
7
public
o'clock on the
meeting.
23rd.
That's what I would.
If we could
7
do
o'clock on the
that.
23rd, and that's public comment, people would know to come to public comment anyway, so
Yeah.
we want to have public comment on this issue, that's part of the hearing.
Yeah.
And then we can adjourn it to the meeting.
Makes sense to me.
Is there a specified time that the hearing has to happen for? Or is it just that we need to provide an opportunity for public input?
I believe so, yeah. I can check with Kate on that. I don't think it's a long period of time.
Cool.
It just needs to be well communicated.
Yeah, we just need to communicate as soon as possible.
I wasn't looking at things. It needs to be well communicated and proper notice given.
Cool.
And we can get together and talk about anything.
It's a long way out.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised the notice period is that long.
We will be compliant and
We're not,
have a meeting.
and extra safe, I mean, that
Right.
route, yeah, no matter what.
There's no reason to have it earlier,
Yeah.
right? So we will have it done. And noted, correct? Do we need, it's not a voting action, correct? We're just setting a meeting?
That's informational item.
Right, all right. Any other discussion items? Are we good? It's dates of importance. Dr. Brown, upcoming dates next week perhaps? Do you wanna-
Convocation, Leading with Love, September 4th is the convocation, 8:30. And Leading with Love is the 5th, at 7:30.
Don't let kids show up at school
And
sometimes.
that first day, the kids coming.
Oh.
They know when they coming, I'm even letting the adults about what they do.
Okay.
Yeah, they come on the 5th too.
Right, so adults and kids coming together.
All
That's
coming together.
Isn't that a good thing, Dr. Brown? I think that's
With your
right.
backpacks ready.
Right, all right. Anything else, folks, for tonight? Brad, anything?
Nope.
Okay, just checking scores, all right.
It was not.
I know. Are we good, Nicole? Can, Nicole and I have been ready to go home for a little while now. And,
I have to pick up my kids.
yeah, so, without objection, we are adjourned. All right? Thanks,
Yeah,
Brad.
please do that.